Now, US President Donald Trump has been hosting South African President Cyril Ramaphosa at the White House today. Relations between the two countries have been at an all-time low. During the meeting, Trump accused the country of allowing a genocide against white farmers and asked White House staff to dim the lights as videos relating to alleged genocide were shown. Take a look.
A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act.
And these are people that are officials, and they're saying that kill the white farmer and take their lands. Death of people. Death, death, death.
To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by Dr. Leigh-Ann Gerrans, Professor of International Relations at the American University in the Emirates, and Al Arabiya editor Wissam Kiruz is also here with me. Thank you both so much for joining me this evening, both to have you on set with me. What a pleasure. We just saw Donald Trump there, and he played that video to Cyril Ramaphosa, obviously saying, dim the lights. What did you make of the talks between the two leaders, and did you feel this was an ambush?
First, we need to see that this is becoming a trend for Trump. This is becoming his style, to have heads of states there and then really go at them and embarrass them in front of the media. And it's becoming more and more prepared. So now we've seen he has the video, he has the articles and so on. So it's becoming a bit too much, definitely. But on the other hand, if we know it's going to happen, how can we call it an ambush? President Cyril should have been prepared, like every president who goes to the White House. They should have expected this, and they should have, adopted different ways of speaking and of addressing the issues. He definitely tried to say, okay, this is an issue that we will discuss. We recognize that there's an issue, but we also see that you are misinformed on some issues. He tried to clarify, but still it was not enough. And the discussion went in all different directions. It didn't really give enough space for the South African president to express himself and to explain the situation properly.
It's an absolutely stunning new episode of what's happening in the Oval Office, to a certain extent that we think that we should reconsider the name of the Oval Office. It should be rebranded as the lynching office. It has been happening quite a few times. At the same time, I would say there is an obvious maybe elephant in the room. The narrative that came from Trump seems to be a little bit close to what Trump's friend has been advocating, Elon Musk, who was there. At the same time, in retrospect, when we see that the White House is enjoying this kind of set, so in retrospect, we are now more sure that what happened with Zelensky more than a month and a half ago was also a setup. And I would also suspect that some of these head of states now, they have like a secret thing between them. What if, who will go there and will come out with the minimal damage? Unfortunately for the president of South Africa, it wasn't a very good day. And Trump wasn't at all empathetic with him or, connecting with him in any way.
And when Cyril Ramaphosa actually arrived in Washington today to go to the White House, he said that he really wanted trade and tariffs to be on the top of the agenda. And of course, US aid, which has been cut, and that didn't get there. But on that video that Donald Trump played, it was actually a video of Julius Malema, who is chanting "kill the Boer," which means kill the whites. And he is the leader of the EFF party in South Africa. Now, this party is well known for this rhetoric, but this is something that Ramaphosa did try to clarify, and Donald Trump hit back at that clarification. And as you say, Elon Musk is in the mix here too. But I wonder where we go from here when it comes to South Africa, because a lot of the problem with South Africa is crime is unprecedented. Sure. And I think everyone in the Oval Office today agreed with that. There's corruption. And right now, South Africa needs investment, and Cyril Ramaphosa said this. So is he going to go to the White House and get what he wants?
I think maybe Ellie can talk more about the politics, but South Africa has been consistently on the other side compared to the United States of America for the last many years now. When it comes to the problem with Russia, they haven't been aligned. When it comes to the problem in Gaza, they haven't been aligned. When it comes to the G20 politics, they haven't been aligned. So he could not expect Trump to be completely friendly. Now, at the same time, South Africa is a very inspiring country for the world. Maybe not for the current generation as much as it was for the last 30 years. Unfortunately, South Africa did not live up to the dream we all had in 1994 when the fall of the apartheid brought so much, positivity to this world. Having said this, and I go to South Africa a lot, it's a country that is much more appeased in real life. I mean, of course, the biggest problem is corruption and crime. We all know this. But it's a country that somehow many in this country still believe in the idea of the rainbow nation.
There's definitely, I think, some residues from the apartheid regime. There are some issues that need to be addressed, notably the issue of land ownership, redistribution of wealth, and so on. Also some, racial anger or racial divisions that are still maybe there and visible, especially when we have a party like the EFF that you mentioned, still gather a lot of votes and a lot of support and is one of the big parties in the parliament. So there's definitely an issue. And we saw one of the members of the South African team who was in the White House, who is also, it seems, a friend of Trump and who lives regularly in the US. Sorry, I forgot the name. But he mentioned that it's been 35 years since the transition. And we still didn't see the change that we hoped we would like to see. So definitely there are some things that need to be addressed. But on the other hand, that video that Trump showed about, thousands of white crosses and people paying homage, I'm not even sure if that's from South Africa. I doubt it is. And I think it's going to be a big scandal when we realize the video was not from South Africa. So Trump is taking things in his own way, in his, between brackets, unprofessional or not politically correct way. And he's pushing for things where I guess the South Africans and the world knows that we do have a problem and we need to address it, but not in this way and not at the expense of other major issues and concerns that need to be discussed. Yeah,
absolutely. And you just mentioned there the person who was talking about the 35 years of the ANC and the government needs changes, Ernie Els. He's a famous South African golfer. He's a longtime friend of Donald Trump. And I thought it was interesting that Cyril Ramaphosa took Ernie Els, the famous South African golfer, and Retief Goosen, who's another famous South African golfer, with him, because maybe he probably knew in the back of his mind this could get tense.
So he prepared. I mean, Ellie was saying maybe they should come more prepared.
Yeah,
apparently
but it didn't do him good
enough.
Not enough. But another thing that is concerning is, I think, for South Africa is trade and tariffs, because the US is so important to them.
And technology, they focused on it more than one time.
Yes, absolutely. And they spoke about the need for Starlink and how that can bring technology to South Africa, much needed technology in the country. And I just wonder now, do you think that there's still a relationship there between the US and between South Africa, and Donald Trump will help them move forward as they wish to and invest?
I don't think there's anything that goes for free in Trump's US. He's going to see what is the benefit that the US is going to gain from that relationship, and based on that decide how to approach South Africa. He has even done that with the UK, with the closest allies, with Canada, let alone South Africa. So he's going to be very meticulous. He's going to put some conditions. And if he keeps having Elon Musk on his ear whispering about that specific issue, he's going to put that at the forefront, maybe again at the expense of key cooperation that could have happened.
At the same time, as a testimony of my personal experience in South Africa, despite, of course, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Indeed.
And despite the fact that they have the best food, the best meat, the best wine, and the best scenery, it is also a country that has paved the way forward for Africa. Let's not forget that the biggest chunk of population growth in the world is happening in Africa. Let's not forget that all the major issues of the world will be happening in Africa, from terrorism to fighting diseases. This is at the forefront of the future. And South Africa is the key of the whole of Africa. Despite that, Donald Trump doesn't seem to be very personally connected to the importance of this country. And when he was asked if he will go to join the G20 summit in South Africa, he said, G20 is not important without America. So obviously, wherever the positioning of South Africa is, it's not very relevant to Donald Trump. And there is a chunk of what he was saying that was addressed to a local audience, so inclined to the right narrative.
So I've got a confession. I'm obviously from Africa. I am from Zimbabwe, but I have a South African mother. And I reflected on the story today. As I remember the day Nelson Mandela got into power, and I remember at school I saw watching the change of the South African flag and it becoming the Rainbow Nation.
Yes.
And then I remember in 1995, South Africa won the Rugby World Cup. And even Ernie Els brought that up. He said Mandela united us through sport.
1995, yeah,
That
it was a
was
big moment.
That was
it's
a
one
big
of the
moment for
unifying
us.
moments.
And they hosted also the
And the World Cup
Exactly.
2010.
Yeah, so Africa has always got a lot of hope. So let's see where we go from here. But really interesting conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's move on to another discussion now. The Gaza Health Ministry and local hospitals say at least 82 people, including women and a newborn, were killed in Gaza during Israeli airstrikes overnight. The strikes come as Israel's war on Hamas continues, despite mounting international concern over the scale of the offensive. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel has the right to defend itself. Israel began allowing dozens of humanitarian aid trucks into Gaza yesterday, but aid groups say it still hasn't reached Palestinians in desperate need. Earlier, I spoke to the journalist Mohammed Thabet in Gaza. He told me what things were really like on the ground.
Well, the situation in Gaza is extremely difficult. As we know, for the past 80 days, no aid have entered for the UN humanitarian organization, nor to the private sector. As recent reports by the UNICEF stated that we have 71,000 cases of malnutrition amongst children, 14,000 of whom might face death in the near future without intervention, as well as 300 cases of miscarriage by pregnant women.
So, Wissam, we've actually been hearing from Benjamin Netanyahu in the last couple of hours. What did he have to say?
We are yet to hear anything new in what he's saying, but he repeated what he has been saying for the last days. He says that all of Gaza will ultimately be under the Israeli control. He said that if there is any chance for a ceasefire, Israel is ready. So apparently he still considers that there is nothing serious in it, despite all what's happening in Doha and anywhere else. And he insists that all of the Gaza Strip will be under security control of Israel. And a lot of those who are opponents to what he says, they still see in his back mind a clear idea about the possibility of making this idea of taking out, transferring the population of Gaza outside. But what's most striking in all the testimonies is that it's not about death or killing or injuries for civilian people. The misery in Gaza is beyond death. The misery is an open air, unseen before land of misery. And I don't think that the world is allowed or can yet or still accept this to happen. I think the Israeli government policies are hitting to the limits of what the world can accept. Despite all the sympathy after October the 7th, they have reached a very critical limit of what the world can accept.
Indeed, I think what is happening is beyond comprehension. We are not seeing the full picture. The world is not seeing the full picture. We just heard from the journalists. Just to put things a bit into perspective, we are talking about 14,000 infants under 2 years old who are in risk of dying within few days if the aid do not come in. And this is what made even Netanyahu a couple of days ago say we're reaching almost the red lines in Gaza. That's why we will allow some aid in. And he even allowed these few trucks without the meeting of the cabinet, because he knows that in his cabinet he has even more extremist right-wing people who will refuse allowing the aid to go in. But speaking about aid, we're speaking about 93 trucks that have, that's the Israeli number, that have the permit to go in. The actual number estimated by humanitarian organization is the minimum of 1,000 just to reach the basic minimum. And we have to keep in mind that we have 9,000 trucks on the Egyptian side of the border that has been there for more than a month. None of them has been allowed in. And this food eventually is going to expire. This medicine eventually is going to expire. I think we have a bigger problem also, because you said in your introduction that we're not sure where the aid is reaching and how much is it reaching. So these trucks were sent in. But organizations like the World Food Programme, which is one of the very, very few remaining active in Gaza, are saying, where are we going to take these? How are we going to distribute them? Are you going to ensure safe passage of the food to the infrastructure that they have inside Gaza? Do we have the people to distribute? Do we have the order to distribute, the people in order and the proper distribution so the food would reach the
logistics?
The logistics. So practically we're speaking about, even if the trucks go in, we don't have the infrastructure and the logistics to distribute them to the right people at the right time, to those who need them most. It's a really catastrophic situation. And I think we are seeing a significant change in the opinion of countries and even in the US, as we saw the leak in Washington Post yesterday. Something is changing. Would it be enough to force Netanyahu to change? And will it be early enough to save more lives, the lives that are at threat?
You know, Dr. Ellie, you brought up a really good point there. And Wissam, I wonder if we could talk about this a little bit more. So we saw the UK and Canada and France, and I think it was France, am I right?
Yes.
From memory. And they've all condemned Israel. They've signed this letter, you know, it's been a joint statement. Then we saw the UK yesterday saying, okay, no more trade talks with Israel until aid is let in. But is it just all talking? It's like nothing concrete's actually really happened from Israeli allies.
Well, first, of course, the utmost priority should be for the humanitarian situation in Gaza. But at the same time, after the 7th of October, there was some kind of untold consensus amongst ultra-wing Israelis, is that it's now maybe a very reasonable and legitimate time to say that a Palestinian statehood is not the best thing, and it is a gift for the terrorism. This is what they were saying. But now that the misery in Gaza has reached unspoken levels, you have countries like, you know, allies with Israel. The UK, Canada is a big ally of Israel.
Sure.
And France, who is now preparing with the Americans for a special summit on the statehood issue. Those people, they say, the three major countries, they are saying that we are going to recognize a Palestinian state. And this is definitely a game changer. And this is upsetting Israel or the Israeli government very much. But what is even more worrying for Benjamin Netanyahu is a very clear shift in the American tone. And this is what Dr. Ali was hinting to. When we have clear signal from America, from Donald Trump, to the Israelis to say that enough is enough. It is a big change. They haven't really heard this a lot from the Americans. And to put this in the context of what Trump brought into this region and what he took from this region at his Gulf tour, I think Donald Trump is bringing into the relation with Israel for the first time an element of interest, because the relation between America and Israel was the only relation that was beyond direct interest. Now, Donald Trump is saying now there is an element of interest. our American interest, even with Israel. The same happened with British, with Canadians, with NATO allies. So why not with Israel? And Israel is very worried about this because this is a real game changer.
Dr. Ellie, just a quick word on Hamas. Do you think Hamas are feeling the pressure? Do you think they're going to give up the hostages and relent a little bit because of what they're seeing happening in Gaza? They're obviously aware that people are starving, no medicines coming in.
Unfortunately, we know the kind of organization that Hamas is. This is an organization that does not care about the life of the people. We've even heard their own people, let alone others. And we've heard the leaders of Hamas, like the leaders of Hezbollah before, say, fine, 10,000 were killed, we'll make sure to produce
we'll make new babies.
We'll make
this
new
is
babies,
their mentality.
As simple as that. It was crazy. This is how much they care less about 10 or 20 or 50,000 people. In their idea, this is an ideological war that you can either win or die trying. They have no issue.
Yeah.
For me, as a person, any criteria of a leadership is the safety and quality of life of your people. The moment that I see my presence is getting more harm to my people than security or than safety or than well-being, I would drop my weapons, I would give up everything and maybe leave Gaza to give a chance for peace. They're still stuck on the idea that no, we will not leave Gaza, no, we will not give up arms, and no matter what that cost will be. So I think the people of Gaza are stuck between two extremes, into harsh realities, between two monsters, if I may say.
And the absurdity of the Israeli violence on civilians who have nothing, really have nothing, is only equaled by the absurdity of Hamas keeping the hostages. Because keeping the hostages is also part of, giving Israel a reason to keep doing what it is doing. And at the same time, we have the feeling, like Ellie was saying, that the leadership of Hamas, although they killed their military leader, but they don't seem to be under a lot of pressure. They are hidden somewhere under the ground. And at the same time, in their mentality, in anywhere in the world, weapons are there to protect the people. But in their mentality, and in this Axis mentality, it's the people who are there to protect the weapon. And this is, this is too bad. And we are hearing a lot from the Palestinians themselves about refusing that this continues. Because we know Hamas has no future in Gaza. They have no future in the political coming state, if it will ever come. So they have to fight till the end. They have no other choice.
But like you do say, it's the people, Dr. Ellie, who are stuck in the middle of it. But thank you so much.
Meanwhile, just an anecdote, a fact actually, that Israel's soldiers shot at European diplomats visiting the West Bank just yesterday.
This has been condemned by Germany, and they are wanting to call for an...
They called in the ambassador, Germany, Portugal, and other diplomats who were there, and the soldiers simply shot at them. This is how much disregard they have to the international community, and I think this is going to come back to hurt them.
Yes, and there will be an investigation into that. I think that's what a lot of the countries are calling for. But Dr. Leigh-Ann Gerrans, thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Let's move on to another story now. And the European Union has lifted economic sanctions on Syria, aiming to support the country's reconstruction efforts after the fall of the Assad regime. The move comes after President Trump announced a similar US policy shift following his meeting with Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Shara, in Riyadh last week. Here's how the news was announced.
On Syria, the ministers agreed to lift all economic sanctions while maintaining those related to Assad regime and human rights violations. This decision is reversible and conditional also on progress. There can be no peace without the path to economic recovery, and we all need a stable Syria. Is everything really ideal there? No, it is not. It's very clear, but I think we need to give the Syrian people a chance.
So, Dr. Ellie, what do you make of this development following the decision by the US to lift sanctions against Syria?
It is a huge step forward. It is a huge gain for the new Syrian regime. However, I'm very happy to see that they used reversible and conditional, because I think this regime has been speaking all the right things and has been taking all the right steps, not enough, not fast enough, and not well enough. So we actually need to make sure that the international community keeps engaging the Syrian new leadership in a way that keeps pushing it forward on all the right issues. They've been cooperative. We have to see how that works out. But they also need to take practical steps into some significant issues. We know that the US have put some conditions on that openness. The White House spokesperson detailed them in being getting control of the foreign fighter or getting rid of the foreign fighters that were considered extremist terrorists, keep cooperating with the US on fighting ISIS, make sure Iran has no foothold in Syria and Syrians' land are not used as a foothold for Iran, and controlling the borders in the general sense. Now, the underlying untold condition is sitting on the table with Israel, or at least being open for talks with Israel. On all these issues, the Syrian regime have said yes. Now, in comparison, the EU has added one more condition, which is a proper political participation and respect for human rights. And I think this is always, the EU has played that additional human aspect and human rights aspect, which is very needed in Syria today.
Lifting the sanctions is so essential in order to bring in the money and to allow Syrians to rebuild their countries.
Sure.
And if it happens in the best conditions, we are about to see one of the biggest projects of reconstruction in the world. We are about to see something that would cost anywhere between $250 billion and $500 billion. It's one of the greatest projects in the world. And in order for that to happen, we need stability and we need the money flowing. And in order for the money to be flowing, we need to lift the sanctions. Apparently, Donald Trump understood very quickly, and thanks to the relations with the Saudis and also to some kind of connections with Turkey, that this is the priority now, getting rid of the sanctions. Having said this, and on the four told conditions and the one untold condition, I would say that the very difficult one, the first one, is controlling the foreign fighters. Because as we speak now, Mr. Ahmad al-Shara, who is popular and who has support of a large chunk of his population, and who has the sympathy of Donald Trump apparently, despite the fact that is still, till this very moment, considered he is on the list of wanted people, despite this fact, he has a very big problem. He is faced with a lot of those foreign fighters who might be a problem in the future. And if anyone will have to deal with this problem, it's Ahmad al-Shara. And the international community, they know that there is no other way forward other than putting all the efforts to give all the support for Ahmad al-Shara and his government.
Actually, earlier I spoke to economic and financial researcher Dr. Mahmoud Abdul Karim. He told me the first steps needed to improve Syria's economy. Take a listen.
What we need right now, okay, we need to just the sanction to be lifted on the, on the central bank itself, because without just having, the SWIFT active on the, on the network of the banking, there would be no money just entering into the financial system on the Syria, and that can just slow down the economic cycle, and that will not have any kind of, we're not going to witness any improvement, economic improvement on the ground.
Yes.
So that's the main reason. So the first action should be taken right now, lift the sanction on the SWIFT.
So, Wissam, exactly, basically what you were saying, lift the sanctions on SWIFT, and maybe that will also help Syria when it comes to the World Bank and to the IMF,
Definitely.
possibly giving them money, Dr. Ellie.
And at this stage, we know that the general population, the majority of the Syrian people, simply want a proper livelihood. They want to reconstruct their houses, they want a proper economic cycle, they want to be able to afford to live properly and decently. And if you achieve that to them through the lifting of economic sanctions, then you have the time and the luxury to deal with all the other, maybe more complex issues. But the question was, what comes first? And it seems that through MBS's intervention with Trump and through the reaction of the international community, they did accept to give a Sharia that pass and say, okay, we will help you with the economic sanctions, but you have then to deliver and focus on addressing all the other key issues.
And obviously, Syria hasn't held elections, and this is something that is going to have to happen in the future. So there's going to have to be some sort of political, I don't know, infrastructure in place for that to happen.
Well, I would say that for a lot of people, elections, democracy is not the utmost priority. This region, Syria, hasn't been seeing any democracy for the last 50 years, 60 years, 50 years. So the priority for people is security, safety, but also because it's also a multicultural, it's a diverse society. The priority is for every component of the society is to feel that they are part of this nation. So this democracy in this sense, not in the sense of going to the polls and choosing parties, whatever. At the same time, we have to acknowledge something very important, and this is acknowledged by the Europeans apparently and by the Americans. Syria is just too important. It is the one piece of land that holds this whole region together. It's the one piece of land that is linked to Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, Palestine, Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. And at the same time, if we need a new order in this region, it's happening mostly in the consolidation of stability in Syria. So this is why you are seeing all this international effort to be behind Ahmed al-Shara. And at the same time, the game changed when there was a regime change in Syria. Iran lost, and maybe America is more willing for a deal with Iranians now because Iran is simply weaker than any time before. And the Saudis are stronger than any time before. This is what has been said by Fareed Zakaria. So when Syria stopped being within the Iranian influence, the game changed. And it all happened after October 7th, after killing Hassan Nasrallah, and after the regime fall in Syria. So the world is consolidating on Syria because a new Middle Eastern order has to pass by Syria and has to pass by a new relationship with Syria. And if Syria is on the table with Israel, Lebanon is definitely on the table, and things will change.
However, on the note that you mentioned, the issue of democracy, the issue of, we've seen, again, some steps, but there are very far from perfect. So we've seen a constitutional declaration that is not really progressive and helpful, especially on the issue of participation, the identity of the state, the relationship with all the components. And then we've seen the supposed national dialogue, which was practically a joke. 2-3 days of people meeting in a hotel, and they said, this is the transitional justice, this is the national dialogue that we've done. Moreover, we've seen all his appointments in the ministries, in the key positions, in the army, have been from his close connections, not including any of the components of the Syrian population, not even including people and generals from the Free Syrian Army that started all the revolution in Syria. So are we actually giving a pass to someone who has the potential of being a different kind of dictator than the one that we just got rid of? This is where I think the issue is very critical, and this is why I said the EU sanctions being conditional and being reversible is very important to make sure we're on the right track.
And I think that's the big question, and that will play out. But thank you so much for your thoughts on that. And finally, Wam and Ellie, you've come up with a couple of quirky stories for the day. So you've done your homework. But I actually want to talk about something. You two have been friends since you were 15 years old.
Indeed.
Tell us a little bit about how this came to be.
Well, first, it's important to say it's the first time ever that we are together on air.
And I feel very privileged it's with me.
Thank you for
so
that
much.
opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's been a friendship since 1993. So
1993, 1994.
A lifelong friendship and cooperation on so many different aspects. Our families are friends, our kids are friends, and this is a very cherished friendship. And here we are again in Dubai meeting, not in Lebanon, but it's a great pleasure.
We have had a great life together, a great childhood, a great teenage. We have had great dreams. I don't know if we envisioned ourselves to be in this time of our lives doing politics on air.
Speaking
Not
to
But,
me, yes.
but it looks not bad, huh?
We haven't had always the same political opinions, by the way.
Yeah, I'm very surprised that today we are aligned.
Aligned
It's
and
not good for
agree.
TV. Yeah.
What's the worst thing Dr. Ellie's ever done?
Oh,
Naughtiest thing?
And the naughtiest thing, oh, he is very nice, but I
He's very nice.
he took us once into 4 days of camping.
4 days of camping?
Yeah, and he never told us that the spot where we are camping has no coverage for phones or whatever. So we had to be disconnected from the world for 4 days, and we were not prepared for that.
Oh,
the good old days.
the
the
good
young
old days,
days.
Dr. Ellie, when you couldn't take your phone. And you, what's Wissam done? Worse
I
than
have done-
camping?
Oh, we
A
cannot
lot
say
of
it on
that.
air. No, but Wissam has always been a charming person that
Yes.
knows how to get people around him.
Yes.
And that has got him in trouble sometimes. So let's not get
That's
into
not
details.
gonna.
No. I know what charming people are like. But we're going to move on to the stories that you have chosen. And Wissam, you've chosen a story about the future of air travel, a standing up only section.
Would you accept to go on a trip for a ticket that is not very expensive, but to stay standing up for 2 hours in an airplane?
I just saw the pictures there on air. It looks like a roller coaster ride, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It looks like
yeah.
something from a roller. Would I be prepared to stand up? Maybe if it was just for 2 hours, yes, but no longer than 2 hours.
Well, apparently this...
And not in heels.
Not in here.
No, so I'd have to be in
It would-
comfy shoes.
Even
You
in
know?
a roller coaster, you're actually sitting.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's-
This
I
one,
mean,
you're
it is
standing.
kind of
You're
sitting.
hanging.
It's
Yeah.
sitting like it's hanging.
But
Yeah,
what
it's a-
worries me is there's no TVs.
No, there's no
Or
TVs, of
like
course.
What, you're just sort of like...
That's the only
Hanging.
concern. That's the only concern. You're standing for 2 hours with takeoff and
But-
landing.
Yeah, and no TV. That's my only
The irony is
concern.
that this industry is catering for much more people now who want to travel and feel the freedom of moving at any cost. But in the same time, we are seeing an industry that is going in double speed.
Yeah.
So on one side, you have the airplanes cutting on expenses and making ideas to make more profit and shrink the cost for tickets and for the operation. On the
Yeah.
other side, especially here in the Gulf region, you are going on more and more superlatives of doing better airlines, higher standards. And we see Emirates Airlines just made the biggest profit in their history. They made $6 to $7 billion, and they gave their employees 22 months of bonus.
Nice.
So that's amazing.
Whoa.
And we are hearing now in Saudi Arabia, they are launching their high-end carrier Riyadh Air with business class seats that you can hear music and without headphones. So you sit, you hear the music, but no one else does. Imagine this is a new technology where you have this luxury.
I would rather go on that plane than
Yeah, me
stand
too.
up for 2 hours.
It's obvious.
Well, I think the key point is that, the business is flourishing and airlines are making good profits. So why do you need to squeeze people like that as a sardine box just to make a 20% increase in the capacity of the airplane? So I guess that will make more profit, but for companies who are making, and I think the suggestion was from Ryanair,
Ryanair and the others, yeah.
which is the third in the world in profits. They already make $2 billion of profit in 2024. So is it worth it? If it has market,
There is a
probably
case
it will
study,
be.
Ellie, where one carrier made a profit of $2 million by only removing one olive from every food tray.
No way.
Yes. So you see, little things do change.
Every little helps, they say. But we're going to move on to another story. And this is your story, Dr. Ellie. And it's about a cat mule that was sneaking into a prison in Costa Rica.
Indeed. We saw the police capture a cat that was carrying 10 grams of heroin, 60 grams of heroin, and some 200 grams of marijuana. And they were strapped on the cat, and it was sent into the prison. Obviously, it knows where to go. We don't know how. I don't know how many times the cat has done the trip before.
Before, yeah, it's so used to
the cost. I tried to see the cost of this product strapped upon her. It was more than $28,000 worth of heroin and I don't know if it's wholesale.
Wholesale, you know how
but it's weird that people are getting more and more creative, using now cats as transportation carriers for drugs into a prison.
Because I always hear a lot of stories about drones. There's a big problems with drones, but a cat is a whole different scenario.
Definitely. I think it's a first that we've seen that.
But the cat is fine?
The cat is fine.
Or the first cat that got caught.
No, it was strapped on the cat, so they were able to remove the products and deliver the cat to an animal protection agency. So the cat is fine. The cat is safe. I don't know if it's high from the drugs.
I thought it was catnip that they like, But no, very interesting stories, and I really appreciate both of you for coming on this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you to today's guest, Dr. Ellie Al-Hindi, Professor of International Relations at the American University in the Emirates, and Al Arabiya editor Wissam Kiruz. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also follow us on X. GNT with Michal Prendergast is coming up next. Goodbye and thank you.